Some of that craziness from last week has unfortunately spilled over into this week. I don't know if you can see, there's a cat behind Taylor. That is one of two cats. I also have a puppy in the house. The cat is down here because she loathes the dog, and the dog is upstairs. So if you can look around with what's behind camera, if you could see right now, there's just, it looks like we've been working hard, piles of paperwork everywhere. And so, yes, we're coming in. We're hoping to change the energy, because I know it's been crazy for us, and I don't know how it's been with you guys.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump in with our Bible verse of the week. So this week it is Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12. And that says, hatred stirs up strife, but love conquers all sin. Again, hatred stirs up strife, but love conquers all sins. So as I just stated earlier, we are focusing on the different ways that love can come into your life. So this week we're focusing on loving yourself.
Right. So out of the 4 weeks, out of the month, each week we're dissecting a different part of love. And we have newsletters and kind of different material for you guys that falls in line with our topic each week. And so we really started with loving ourselves. Because that old saying is true, that you can't fully love someone else until you love yourself. And I think until you do that inner work and that journey of growth, there's really no way to love as well and as deeply until you've done that work inside.
I 100% agree with that. So when you think about loving yourself, I think a common theme that we have seen when it comes to many of our clients is equating love for yourself to selfishness.
Oh, absolutely. Is that the case?
That is not the case. But when I think about society and everything, people that are go-getters, they're out there, the people who actually have done the work to figure out what it means to love themselves. Sometimes, we could be a little bit intimidated or off-put by that person, and just seeing like, wow, what's happening there? They're really selfish. What would you say to people that feel like that?
So there's a difference between selfishness and loving yourself. And so what it means to love yourself is, to love yourself does not mean we think we're perfect. It does not mean we don't have insecurities. It doesn't mean we act selfishly, meaning we don't act in a way to intentionally harm others for us to get ahead, right? That's what selfish behavior is. Loving yourself is part of acknowledging your journey, where you're at, and all the little quirks about yourself that may not be perfect, and just acknowledging that it's different and it's normal and it's okay, and being able to sit in your feelings. That's what loving yourself is.
So let's reflect that back into our Bible verse. So hatred stirs up strife, but love conquers all sins. When I think about that saying, it takes me back to, again, just what's happening in the world right now. Everybody maybe they are a little bit focused on themselves and their opinions and how it's right. But there's such a lack of love in that, in the relationships with people. And when you don't love yourself, how difficult is it to actually show love that you love and care for other people around you?
Absolutely. And later in the show, we'll get into one of the 4 main components of what it looks like when you don't love yourself, because you kind of just mentioned one, but we'll put a pin in that for right now. And I kind of mentioned this, so we'll get into ways not loving yourself manifests. But again, the reason it is so important to love yourself, and I cannot stress this enough, we cannot love, so our brains are designed in a way that we cannot love others more than what we know to love ourselves. And so I often hear people say, like, I love my spouse or I love my kids more than I love myself. And I get the sentiment. The sentiment is they mean the world to you and they're the most important thing in the world and you love them deeply. But our brains are not designed to love something else more than we love ourselves. It doesn't work like that. Our brains can only love as much as it knows to love, which is generally reflected inwardly. Wow, I started the whole way through that. It generally starts with an inward love, and that's how our brains learn and grow, and it's formulated. It's the foundation. And so that's why everyone says you have to learn to love yourself first.
And I have to pause and, jump in with that today and say, like, Nikki clearly loves herself, right? Because you've kind of conquered the ability to say, you know what, sometimes I can stutter through things, but I can keep going. I mean, me, I'm always doing weird stuff, especially today before the show. But yeah, it just goes to show that you love yourself. You're giving yourself a break there.
I'm being forgiving, okay.
You are being forgiving. But that's a big key to be forgiving of yourself. Ooh, that reminds me. I'm so sorry. I know you were going on a different tangent.
Oh, you do you.
But forgiving yourself is a huge piece of loving yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
I know last month we were kind of focusing on anger and forgiveness. And because we weren't able to do that last show with you guys, we kind of skipped past that forgiveness piece. So do you think we should share with them what we were going to say?
Sure, you go.
Okay. So just really quick, guys, when you learn to forgive and not necessarily forget, right? You really relinquish that control that anger has had on your life, that other people have held over your life, the weights that are attached to your ankles dragging you down. When you forgive, I kind of feel like that's the first step of learning to love not only others around you, but learning to love yourself.
Yeah, and a quote I always like to use with people and to apply to ourselves, I know I've used it with you, is we make the best choices we can with the information we know at the time we know it.
You always say that quote.
I always say it because, I think we get so hard on ourselves and we beat ourselves up. And again, that's part of you loving yourself. It's not that you're perfect. It's not that you wouldn't do things differently. It's that you made the best choices with the information you had and whatever circumstances you were given when they occurred. And that's the best we're all trying to do.
Absolutely. So forgive, forgive, forgive. Another thing that was beautiful in the newsletter that we wrote, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, is that just forgiving doesn't mean you forget the lessons that life has taught you. So as I'm sorry, see now I'm stuttering. As you're forgiving and learning how to do that on this journey that we call life, don't ever forget the lessons that you have learned along the way. It kind of helps with that self-growth, and it helps on that self-discovery journey, and it helps you learn to love yourself even more.
Yeah, and so part of loving yourself is having that deep reflection, right? Of being able to critique yourself adequately. And so there are different ways that not loving yourself can manifest physically, mentally, emotionally. So we're going to dive into some of those ways that occurs when we aren't loving ourselves.
I think one of the biggest physical manifestations of somebody who doesn't love themselves is poor physical health. There's a lot of research out there that kind of links not loving yourself or that mental health illnesses that people have, such as depression and anxiety, to poor health, heart disease, high blood pressure. What are some other ones? Irritable bowel syndrome,
gastrointestinal issues.
Yeah. And for me, there's just so much going on inside of yourself, inside of your brain. You're trying to figure out so many different things, how to forgive, how to let go of anger, or maybe you are angry at someone and don't know how to communicate that. Maybe you're struggling to love yourself. But when you focus on the negative things like that, it has negative consequences on your body.
Yeah, and so if you think about, our ABCs of how we behave, right? We have thoughts, feelings, and actions. It makes sense. Generally, when we don't love ourselves, it translates into insecurity, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, one of those things that are related. And so when we don't have high self-esteem or low confidence, we tend to behave in ways that reflect that. For example, if you have low self-esteem over your weight, you may be restricting food or going on crash diets, which in the long term we know is hard on your heart, it's hard on your arteries, it messes up all of your internal organs. Or maybe if you have low self-esteem because you're a victim of sexual assault, what we often find then is in adulthood, females, especially victimized females, will overeat. So they become unattractive, or what they feel like would be less attractive to people. So they aren't as much, they think they won't become a victim as easily again.
Right.
And so that's how not loving yourself translates into this physical stuff. It's a pretty clear and direct path to self-esteem and then how we behave based on how we feel about ourselves.
I think, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Insecurity is a big indicator that you're struggling to love yourself or struggling to find things that, make you happy in life. With bringing up that connection between sexual assault and obesity or eating, I'm sure many of you have seen that show, My 600-Pound Life. That show, obviously, it helps follow along the journey of people who are trying to lose weight. But what I love about that show is that they capture in the beginning, the person's background and experiences that led up to where they're at today. And often you'll see a journey of not only abuse, but just the failure to love self. And then you see them trying to overcompensate and make up in that way. So for those of you who are watching the show today, as we are going through the different physical manifestations and kind of talking to you about how to love yourself, just write that down. Journal, wow, maybe I identify with this. Or maybe, I am struggling with loving myself, and here's some examples of how that happens. And like Nikki said, it does all start with your thoughts. But taking it a step back further, it starts with life experiences as well. So everything's a learned behavior, right, guys? When you look at the things that you've been through, maybe you watched how your parents handled problems, or how your parents or caregivers handled problems or loved themselves. Maybe you looked at how your friends did it and you adopted that into your life. Now, perhaps you watched somebody who didn't love themselves, somebody who didn't treat themselves with respect, and now you found yourself in that behavior pattern as well.
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned anger, right? So we know that a result of not loving yourself, again, for all of those things like insecurity, low self-esteem, that concoction of negative thoughts you have about yourself, not being able to regulate your emotions is a key sign you don't love yourself. Primarily what that looks like is, I want to say some anger management issues, right? You're quick to yell, you're quick to escalate quickly. Maybe you get upset over really little things in life that don't matter, right? And we spent all last month talking about anger, so we're not going to necessarily recap that. Maybe if your feelings get hurt, you lash out in anger instead of saying, hey, my feelings are hurt when you do this. Can we talk about that, right? So anger is one of the quickest emotions that we display when we don't have good emotion regulation, which almost always leads back to insecurities or ways we don't love ourselves.
Absolutely. Wanted to bring in a statistic here to kind of help resonate with you guys and kind of normalize the fact that people struggle with self-esteem and loving themselves. So in 2020, there was a survey of 85% were surveyed, 85% of the participants identified struggling with that self-esteem and the inability to find love within themselves. Again, so many things in life experiences and the thoughts that we tell ourselves, the feelings that we feel, play into that low self-esteem. Like you said, the inability to regulate your emotions, just the roller coaster of emotions, and don't get me wrong, we can experience so many different emotions throughout the day.
Which is normal.
Which is 100% normal, but it's how you handle it. It's indicative, it's reflective of how you view yourself.
Absolutely. And yeah, in that study, I think it was over 20,000 participants, ages like 13, I forget what the oldest one was, 60, I believe.
Wow.
But they were randomly sampled individuals. And I don't know how they randomly sampled that. I didn't get a chance to look into those details. But 85% self-reported that they struggle with low self-esteem in different ways. And that is just huge.
I have to pull back in my favorite statistic that I probably share 20 times in each show. And it's about thoughts. I know
what you're going to say. Yep.
I am the CBT queen. I love thoughts. How synonymous do you think this 85% of participants who identify with low self-esteem reflects with the fact that 80 to 90% of our thoughts are negative?
100%. I think there's a correlation there.
We should do a study on that.
We can't prove causation, but there is a relationship.
There's definitely a relationship. If you're struggling with low self-esteem or loving yourself, think about those messages that you tell yourself from the minute your alarm clock goes off. Oh, I have to do this. I have to give this report today. I can't. I'm not good at speaking in front of people, or people think I'm stupid. I'm not worthy of doing this. I don't know why my boss would assign this to me. Or wow, my kids, I'm struggling to, relate to my kids. I'm losing that relationship with them. I don't deserve everything that's happening around me. Those negative messages that we tell ourselves is going to reflect probably in 100% of those 85% that said they identify with low self-esteem.
Yeah, and so before, Taylor and I self-disclosed some ways here a little bit about ways in the past we haven't loved ourselves or currently. But, I think that the biggest way it shows up, the reason why this is so important is because especially we have so many people either in therapy or coaching that have relationship struggles, or they're trying to be better parents, but all of the focus is on others, right? It's on their jobs or their spouses or their kids, and they're not doing the inner work necessarily to feel better. And so the reason why this is so important to love yourself is because that's what gives you the ability to have empathy towards others and to forgive.
That's huge.
And to regulate your emotions and to model that behavior for your kids of, okay, when we're sad or angry, it's okay. And this is how we respond, right? That we don't avoid feelings and we just embrace them and we act calmly with grace through them, and it's normal, and then we move on. And so we can't fully do that. It won't be sincere, and it'll show through unless we have that ability to love ourselves.
It reminds me of another saying. If anybody has been on an airplane before, I'm just filled with the same quotes today. But if you've been on an airplane before they take off, they're always telling you, if the masks come down, you want to put the mask on yourself before you help other people. And that applies here to love yourself as well. You have to learn how to love yourself before you can fully give and pour into other people. And remember, that's what I said in the beginning, is that people equate loving yourself with selfishness. But I think, people are just so concerned with being viewed as selfish that they kind of steer away from working on themselves and pouring into other people before they even know what it is about themselves that they need to learn and grow and love.
Yeah, and so what that shows up then in real life is individuals who have codependent relationships, enablers, individuals who get in relationships to look to fix the other person, being overly critical of their kids, or trying to compare their kids. Like, my kid is 9 months old and already doing this. They're smarter. It's like, okay, I think when you love yourself and you have that natural confidence, you want to help others. I think of that saying, like, a true queen helps adjust the other one's crown, not take it off.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. When you have that innate love, you want to share it and you want to spread it. And it's so corny, but it makes the world a better place, right? Whereas if you don't have that self-love, you tend to get the negative competition. You get overly judgmental, critical, and that's kind of showing where you haven't fixed those areas in yourself that are broken.
Do you know what that reminds me of, Nikki? One of the defense mechanisms that we do to kind of protect ourselves from reality, and that's projection. That's projection, where, we struggle to fix. See?
I'm so sorry.
Wait, this way. She's showing us that she loves us by joining the show today as our guest star. Right, Kitty? But anyway, projection is just failing to work on or acknowledge some of the mistakes that you've made in your life, some of the feelings or insecurities, and just pushing that off on other people. It's so much easier to point out that somebody else doesn't love themselves, somebody else is insecure, somebody else can't do X, Y, and Z, than to, point the fingers back at yourself and say, wow, I'm really struggling with being able to match with my kids, relate to my kids. I'm really struggling with being able to be a leader at work. It's easier to point it and make fun of other people or judge other people and not even understand what's happening for yourself.
Absolutely. So in talking about ways we love ourselves, oh gosh, I have so many examples of myself. I'm a work in progress. What are some ways, Taylor, though, that you have acted in ways that you didn't love yourself?
Wow, that's always a journey, right? You mentioned earlier something about health and like food, people with food journeys that go on binge diets and crash course diets and all that. I can consider myself one of those people. I'm laughing because it happens all the time as I'm trying to get back into the gym now. But anyway, I've always thought or envisioned myself as being somebody who is healthy, eating healthy 80% of the time. 80-20, right? You got to have the fun in there. Going to the gym 5 days a week, which sometimes I do, but not 100% of the time. But where my struggle is I end up getting on social media and comparing myself to other females who maybe have their own business and can do it all. Look like they're working out, they eat healthy, they're able to do all these things. And I end up reflecting that on myself and saying, wow, I suck. I'm failing at this. I'm not able to keep up with the things that other people are able to keep up with. So I found that was something that was weighing me down and lowering my own personal self-esteem, and taking away from my ability to actually see how far I have come since I started this whole roller coaster diet and working out thing.
Now, this is going to sound like a guilt trip, and it is not, because I will then also share ways that I have hurt others. So in that process then, because she does not do this often, but she does get the scrolly thing on the social media. Then what do I get? I get a 6:30 a.m. text, paragraphs long, telling me what I should do different in our business. Like, you should do this today, Nikki, and we're going to do this, and da-da-da. And then I become instantly stressed out because it's like Tuesday morning, and I'm like, okay, because she's stressed out about what we haven't accomplished in life. I'm like, wow, you're putting that on me now.
Projection.
I wake up happy. Yeah, I wake up happy. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get my coffee, and it's just like scroll. I'm like, Taylor, like. And then I tell her, like, take a deep breath. Well, maybe we're just not taking it. And like, right. And she goes off in this negative spiral. And then it's possible that sometimes you get a little grumpy if like you don't respond the way you want.
Right.
And then Tommy and I get the brunt end of that. Her husband.
Literally projection. Like that's the definition of projection. I guess I'm a projector.
So I know what's happening. I don't mind when you do that because Lord knows I do that plenty to you. But it's the idea that we have to love ourselves because it will not only affect us. It will accidentally permeate to those around you.
Mm-hmm. And again, the Bible verse, hatred stirs up strife, the first part, right? When you, I don't want to say hate yourself, but when you dislike yourself or you're not investing in yourself or whatever, you know, it's not reflecting that you love yourself, that hatred is going to stir up so many different problems, so much drama, the comparison, you know, reflecting back to December, the blinding lights, the common lies you tell yourself, that strife is going to be stirred up in you.
Yep. So to put myself on.
I'm about to say, yeah, you Miss Lady. What about you?
I have way more examples. Hers was an easy one. So the way if I'm not loving myself, will show up with me is poor boundary setting.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be with friendships, with relationships. But what happens is I'm scared to clearly define a boundary because I'm afraid people will reject me or reject that or think I'm being needy. I don't know. The list goes on. And so I won't say what I want. So what I do then is I tend to do acts of service for others. For example, poor Sean's not here for me to throw him underneath the bus. But, I do this to him every week. So let's say I go above and beyond to try to clean or do his laundry or like do little things. When he gets home, I'm like, see, like I did this.
Look what I did.
Yeah, because I'm feeling insecure and I want that validation. That's not how he shows love. He shows love with quality time and physical touch in other ways, not acts of service. So if he doesn't reciprocate that right away, I'm like, do you hate me? Like, why didn't you tell me, like, thank you and I love you for doing these things? He's like, what things?
And then I gotta put you on the spot because you put me on the spot and guilt trips. I get a barrage of text messages like, Taylor, is it okay? I know it's your brother, but I just want to tell you what's going on. I think we're gonna break up tomorrow. I'm like, why? Oh my God, what happened? Well, excuse me, I cleaned the house and I made dinner and he didn't even acknowledge it. Like, I think we're done. Like, Nikki.
I'm like, he hates me. He doesn't love me anymore. That has happened a few times.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Like when she says, kind of talk to you about your brother, I'm like, I just say, yeah, and put the phone down. Be like, it's fine. Oh my God, that's what you do. It's fine. It's fine.
Sean told me within the first 3 weeks of meeting him that I was the one. But yet somehow I will find a way to contradict. He's given me no reason to be insecure. Not one thing. And if I'm feeling bad about myself and not loving myself that day, will permeate through the rest of my life.
But look for you how much that strife is turning things into a drama llama situation when it doesn't need to be.
And then I'll wait 3 days and talk about it. And then I was like, oh, he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I don't know.
And I think the crazy thing is that God intends for us to love ourselves. That love thy neighbor Bible verse, I can't really quote that right now, but to love yourself, to love other people is very important in your life. It conquers all. Love literally conquers all. So you have to stay away from those things that are going to cause you to reflect on yourself negatively and bring up those insecurities, bring up the comparisons, bring up those thoughts that, you know, you're not worthy. That's strife. That's the devil. That's a lie.
Or even with you and I, like we'll give one last example. Taylor and I, again, I'm dating her brother. We have a business together. We're best friends. We both have, everything. We're finishing dissertations at the same time. So obviously we're in communication 8,000 times a day.
I talk to you more than I talk to Tommy.
Same.
Okay.
Absolutely the same. Okay. Yeah. So if one of us gets busy for any logical reason and have not heard from the other one in more than 3 hours, we both will end up texting the other person, are you mad at me? Is everything okay? Or we get a little off put or like something happens. That's where the insecurities come. Sometimes too, I think if we're not loving ourselves that day, or maybe we didn't have a great session, or maybe we're feeling overwhelmed and then Taylor hasn't texted me 3 hours, I'm like, well, everyone hates me. Yeah. Obviously, that's the only logical explanation.
It can be difficult, but we will definitely get more into love and relationships next Wednesday, because that's just as important as, you know, loving yourself. But it is important to kind of be able to reflect on different things in yourself and like things that make you feel happy, things that do make you feel insecure, things that make you feel challenged. When you love yourself, you're able to reflect on those and kind of, I don't want to say plan, but be able to more so handle that in the moment when it comes up.
So we're going to move on into what loving ourselves actually means. But if you have any examples or could relate to any of the stories we shared, please drop a comment below and let us know we're not crazy and we're not the only ones who feel this way sometimes.
Yeah, right.
So we keep talking about like the detriments that happen if we don't love ourselves. We gave real life examples with our clients, with ourselves. So what does it mean to actually love yourself? What does that look like?
To me, you could ask all 7+ billion people in this world, and that definition is going to look different. The way that I love myself is different from how you love yourself, is different from how your neighbor loves yourselves. But guys, there is one common way that we can show that we love ourselves, or we can see love in other people, of loving themselves. Sorry, wow. And that's through boundary setting.
Absolutely. And I kind of touched base on how I don't set boundaries always. Setting boundaries at work, at home, with your friendships are absolutely key. Boundaries and saying, I think even the most common way that I see all the time is like if a friend group asks you to do something, and instead of saying, no, thanks, I don't want to this weekend, we make up an excuse as to why we can't, instead of just saying, I don't feel like it, and that's okay. That's not a reflection of how I feel about you.
Right.
Just don't want to do this one thing on the date and time that you picked. Why? Why can't we just say thank you for the offer? Maybe next time. I don't want to this time.
Yeah,
I do that to you all the time.
I was gonna say, I think people have a fear of missing out, or that fear that somebody's gonna be upset with them, or like disassociate from them because they don't want to hang out that weekend. Which, to be quite honest, in the trauma therapy that I've been doing with kids, that's a big thing. I actually have a kid now who said, no, thank you, I can't go to the party this weekend. And her friends kicked her out of the friend group. Kicked her right out. So, there is that certain fear there. But when you're able to set boundaries and really understand what that boundary means to you, and you can communicate that and share with other people around you, that is reflective of love and respect for yourself.
Yeah, and the bigger picture that paints, like that fear that you were talking about, is, when we don't love ourselves, other people's opinions of us matter either more than our own, or we take on other people's feelings as our responsibility. I am responsible for my actions and my feelings, and that is it. I am not responsible for your feelings. And so if you decide to get offended because I said no thank you, that's a Taylor problem. That is not a Nikki problem. I'm not responsible for it. I asked you if you wanted to hang out tonight, and you said no thank you. I want to stay in bed and relax, because this girl has had 2 of the world's busiest days. She's like, no, I want to do a dissertation in bed tonight and not do anything. Okay.
And she literally was like, okay, no problem.
I don't care. Yeah, not that I don't care about you. Don't care that you said no. And we're able to do that, but so many people can't. And so loving yourself is setting healthy boundaries. It's being clear while being kind.
I think another part of setting boundaries is sticking to your morals and principles as well. Again, with that friend situation, or a spouse or a partner, even colleagues at work, there's going to be a lot of different morals, opinions, values just floating around. And a lot of times people will try to challenge that, try to get you to switch your mindset on certain things. You have to be firm with yourself and set that boundary. This is what I'm willing to talk about, what I'm willing to share, what I'm willing to accept. Anything that comes close to that or goes past it, I am not engaging.
And again, setting a boundary is not yelling. It's not screaming. It's being kind. I appreciate that you want to share this with me. I'm not willing to have this discussion right now, but let's talk about something else, right? It's just being boundary setting. I think people either don't do it at all, or they scream their boundaries. I'm not okay with this, I'm going to shout it. And it's you don't have to get upset either.
Right.
It's not one extreme or the other. It's just talking like we would about anything else.
And I think, boundaries is a really big topic. It's not as easy to implement it as we might be making it seem right now. It takes some time to, again, explore yourself and learn what it is that you love, what it is that you are willing to put up with in the sense of what's going to cause you to be angry or cause you to feel disrespected or offended. You got to take some time and reflect on that journey, and then really create some hardcore boundaries when it comes to different areas in your life.
Yeah, and so another sign of loving yourself is being able to take criticism. We find that people who are sensitive to criticism are some of the most insecure, insecure people who really don't love themselves, they will act like they love themselves. They'll give you a list of credentials as to why they're better. But when you really dig deep, the insecurities are right below the surface.
I agree with that. And a lot of times, well, it depends on the situation, right? But a lot of times when somebody is trying to give you some criticism or some constructive criticism, people will take it as you're hating on me, you don't like me, I'm not doing good enough. Whatever those insecurities that are coming out and reflecting in that conversation you're having with somebody, it's not always going to be that. Again, when you know yourself, one, and when you've set those boundaries, two, and you're able to hear what people are saying and figure out, okay, how can I apply this to my life because it matters to me? Or thank you for giving me that feedback, but I don't feel like I need that in this moment. And just learning to let it pass by.
Yeah, so yes, I think if someone's giving you feedback, there's always something to learn. That doesn't mean you have to agree with every piece of feedback, but there's always something to learn by it. Even if you disagree with the criticism you're receiving, that person felt the need to say it to you, whether they're right or wrong. So what about that organically can you learn from that moving forward? Doesn't mean you have to change. It just means that you need to acknowledge and think and sit on it. So criticism to me is never a bad thing, ever.
I was going to say, I think we get criticism the most from work, obviously, because they have to look at your progress or the concerns, they have to give you an appraisal, or you get the most criticism from friends and family too. If they see you struggling with something, I don't know why, but they always feel like they're able to interject in your life and point out different things. Now, again, there might be some projection going on there. Maybe they're reflecting their insecurities onto you. That's always an option. That's always an option. But at the same time, somebody might really love themselves and see something that you're struggling with and want to, give that guidance and give that advice to you. It's not always hate.
Right. So like when my grandmother criticizes that I have purple hair now.
What did she say? You didn't tell me this.
There's an expletive in there. I can't share it. Yeah, Nana curses at 80.
Replace it with something that's G-rated.
Oh, bleep, bleep, Nikki. You did not actually bleep and do that, did you? But I did. And it's pink, too. And then she's like, are you trying to get attention? To which my answer was, I'm not trying to get attention.
You don't even leave the house.
That's another story. But
you loved yourself enough to try something new.
Right. And I love myself to know why I did my hair this color. I was feeling doesn't matter why. I was feeling sassy. I wanted to be sassy. But what I know from my grandmother is that I can find her noble intent. She worries about how people will judge me. She comes from a time where like her job was to be a homemaker, right? Her world revolved around having to rely on other people, financially, socially, everything. And so for her, how she presented and how she came off kind of affected her lifestyle and what kind of home she would have. And so for her, looks are very, very important. It's not because she's vain or judgmental. She worries for me. And she wants to make sure that my hair isn't going to be off-putting to clients or, then we're going to lose money and I won't be able to pay my bills. And so I love myself enough to know, like, I'm hearing your criticism. I'm not fighting back. I'm not agreeing with it. Like, I did not agree with her. I also didn't fight back with her. I just recognized where she was coming from. We made a joke about it. And now it's growing on her. I
like that you pointed that out, finding the noble intent. So a lot of times, guys, people are going to say some off-the-wall comments to you. They may bring up something that you're insecure about. So now you're kind of feeling low and like it took a hit to your self-esteem. But think about that noble intent. Why is this person saying this to me? What could this possibly mean? What could I learn from this? Takes me back to like last week when we talked about the pause and break. Sometimes anger, you do have to pause and break, but sometimes when you're trying to truly reflect on what somebody is saying to you, positive or negative, you have to pause and break as well to kind of explore.
Yeah. Saying to kind of how do we love ourselves? This isn't necessarily something we can force, but it's going to be one of those mindset shifts that you'll start to notice as you start to love yourself. And that's if your preoccupation is with your personal problems or other people's problems. And so, whether I'm talking to you or when I'm talking to Sean at night, we tend to talk about other people's problems, not in like a gossipy negative way, but like, oh, this poor person, or oh, like, this is going to sound weird. So I don't know if I've ever told you this. I don't know. So you know how you tell Tommy everything unless I ask you not to, and I tell Sean everything. Okay. Right. That's just a couple of rules.
Boundaries.
Yeah. And we know this, but we know though. So like if you and Tommy are fighting, we're like, oh, like I hope they didn't go to bed fighting. Like I hope they're okay. Like it's genuine concern, even though we know you'll be fine, right? Because we care and love you guys, and we hope that doesn't extend into multiple day fights because those are the worst.
Those are the shower fights. You're like, I really wish I would have told him this.
Exactly. Or if one of our friends are in trouble, so we find that we're talking about other people in a positive way, but we're more concerned about their problems, or we're concerned about what's going on in the world around us. My neighbors across the street, whom we love dearly, she broke her hip, so we talk about them. Like, I wonder how Rosie's doing, things like that. If you find yourself really preoccupied with your own problems, doesn't matter how bad they are, there's probably a little bit of insecurity or lack of confidence or some icky feelings going on about yourself that you can't stop focusing on yourself.
But when you think about somebody who is continuously focusing on themselves, how do you separate trying to learn how to love yourself and maybe just being selfish? What do you think?
So I think that, again, the difference in selfishness is what you're doing helping other people. Yes or no? So, right, the conversations we have, it's like sometimes you come up with good ideas, or like, I'm going to text you and check on you because we were talking about you, right? Is what I'm doing putting other people in harm's way? Is what I'm doing really best for someone else? We see this a lot too. So we do a lot of coaching, like sometimes around custody battles, like we do like co-parenting classes and things like that. And we see that a lot of jealousy or insecurities with one parent or the other. And so when step parents come in, or girlfriends or boyfriends, we'll see that parent get super jealous. Well, I don't want my kid around that person. And we have to think that generally, unless there's like a criminal history of like charges where there's a danger, if we really loved ourselves, theoretically, we should be very excited to have so many more people in our child's life that love them, right? Like, wow, instead of having 2 parents that love you, you have 4 now. Like, how awesome is that? You have all these people who fight for you and want your attention, and you want 16 holidays now. Like, that's awesome.
That's a reframe.
Yeah, but instead we find people getting very territorial and possessive. That is a projection of signs that we're insecure and don't feel good about ourselves.
And again, Proverbs 10:12, it stirs up strife. When there's hatred towards yourself or towards other people, no matter what the situation may be, you're going to see that strife stirred up, and just the unhappiness in general.
And when we look at the world around us with such divide, I even think of our friend group. So my friend group consists of males and females that some are Republican, some are Democrat, some are right down the middle, some don't care about politics. And we talk about it almost every time we hang out. And we have very, very different opinions, but it never turns into a fight. I've never once, because I disagree with that person's political opinions, thought less of them. You've been a part of these conversations sometimes. Like, it's a discussion in the most loving way. Because for the most part, our group loves ourselves, that we don't feel that need to compete or one up or have feelings of strife or stir up anything like that. It's just, we discuss it, we move on, it's over, it's fine.
Right. It's fine. Speaking of it's fine, guys, another way, there's so many different ways. We're bringing you the most common ways that you can learn to love yourself is through acknowledgement and accepting the fluidity of emotions. So a lot of times there's so many different emotions. There's anger, there's happiness, there's frustration, there's irritation, there's excited, whatever. A lot of people try to stay away from the feeling anger or acknowledging it. Those bad emotions, because they associate bad with just, whoa, I don't want to go there. But you have to
no emotion is a bad emotion.
No emotion is a bad emotion. All emotions are like in the human range of being able to feel, right? But kind of like you just said, to take that identifier off and say no emotion is a bad emotion. Allow yourself to acknowledge and feel all the things so that you can understand yourself on a deeper level.
Yeah, and we're not going to delve into the ways to acknowledge your feelings, because that's a whole separate series, right? But yeah, saying, like, you know what, I'm sad right now. Okay, I'm sad right now. I'm upset right now. I'm jealous right now. Okay, but acknowledging your emotions is the only way to start to regulate them, and that's kind of what we talked about earlier. When you don't love yourself, or you start to feel an icky feeling and you avoid it, or you distract yourself, or you do something so you don't have to feel it anymore, it's not us loving ourselves.
Absolutely. So guys, please drop down in the comments, if you will, just different ways that you are learning how to love yourself on this journey. We do find that our viewers like to read other people's stuff, because when you sometimes self-disclose, people can really latch on to that and kind of feel like, wow, I'm not alone in this journey. There's other people that identify with that as well.
Yeah, and so the last way before we come to a close to, and you kind of touched base on this earlier, to really love yourself is invest in yourself, right? Anything that will help you learn, help you grow, help you look at yourself differently, objectively, learn to sit in your emotions, understand more about your mind and your behavior and what your body is telling you, anything that will help you become a better person, invest in it, because it will trickle down to everyone you care about.
So you're telling me to invest in going back to the gym and eating healthy.
I didn't say that.
Yes, she did.
I said you should invest in yourself to figure out why you won't.
Okay.
You can pay me,
Okay. Here we go. Money. Yes, guys. So let's just briefly recap. The steps you can take to love yourself is 1, setting boundaries, learning what that means for you and being able to stick to it, stick to your morals and your values and things you won't budge on. 2, acknowledging all of the feelings. There is no good feelings. There's no bad feelings. Everything is fluid in between. And last but not least is investing in yourself. And I think that you can invest in yourself right down to your thoughts, right down to learning about what you love, right down to going to the gym, getting that extra degree, whatever it is. Invest in yourself because you matter and you are worthy.
Yeah, and we have a comment from Mandy. Hi, Mandy. She says, I'm starting to love myself by investing in my health. I'm doing research and understanding how to best care myself through proper nutrition and hydration. So Mandy and Taylor and I speak occasionally, and I think it was earlier this week or last week, she literally held up 2 thick books on nutrition, and she's like, this isn't about a crash diet anymore. Like, I'm learning to be healthy, and I'm learning my habits and why I do these things. Yes, that is a great way of learning how to love yourself.
That's an awesome investment too.
Absolutely. Yeah, your health, of course, is the ultimate investment. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So there's a couple things that we want to touch base on before we leave, but let's go ahead and close in this prayer briefly before we jump into that.
Would you like to do the prayer today?
I would like to do the prayer today.
Okay.
So pray with us, guys. Dear Lord, help us open our minds and be truly reflective on how it is that you want us to love. Not only loving others, but really reflect on how it is you want us to love ourselves. Again, you created us in your image. We need to be loving. We need to bear all things. We need to understand how we impact one another and impact ourselves, Lord. Help us identify areas where we're sensitive to criticism, or maybe we do project. Help us to understand that it is a learning journey and that we will come out on top with loving ourselves if we remain focused on you. God, please help us along this journey. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to our show, Mind Trip, where we explore the connections between mindsets and mental health. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. Facebook will be Bryant and Katsaounis Life Coaching. Our Instagram is BKLLC19.
And as always, check us out on our website at www.visiondrivencoaching.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter there. You can check out a little bit of our background, what we do, who we serve, all kinds of great information.
And please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at the bottom. I know she just said this, but this week we're really matching up what we're talking about here and going into depth a little bit more in our newsletter. So you'll have something tangible that you guys can read and reference as you go on this journey towards learning how to love yourself.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in how love shows up in your relationships in a good way and a bad way, make sure you check us out next Wednesday at 2.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.